The Forbidden World. There was one law that bound the galaxy, older and stronger than any treaty, council, or empire. It was carved into the minds of children, etched into starship flight codes, whispered across the void in the same hushed tone. Do not wake the humans. No one could say when the law began. Some species claimed their ancestors first carried it from the ruins of burned constellations. Others said it had been gifted by gods. The Unified Council called it tradition, though even their oldest archives refused to detail its origin. But the weight of it was undeniable. Civilizations rose and fell, yet the rule remained. It was not debated. It was not questioned. It simply was. Arikthal had been raised on the stories. His people, the Creel, had traded along the spiral arms for centuries, and every spaceport carried its own version of the warning. Some told of entire fleets reduced to drifting wrecks when humanity's wrath fell upon them. Others swore that the humans had once shaped the stars themselves, pushing suns into alignment with a thought, crafting whole sectors of space as one might carve stone. Arik had never believed them. He was a scholar by calling, a seeker of truths buried beneath myth. Tales of gods and starshapers were little more than propaganda, useful for controlling the fearful. He had studied the records, compared cultural timelines, traced the evolution of the legend. By every measure, it was an invention. And yet, Earth remained untouched. It sat in its quiet system, ringed not by patrol fleets but by silence itself. Merchant lanes bent around it, explorers mapped the galaxy but skipped over its orbit, and even scavengers avoided its abandoned satellites. From orbit, the blue-green world shone in perfect balance, whole and waiting. No war had scarred it, no colonists had claimed it, no ruins betrayed collapse. It was a jewel left lying on velvet, pristine, untouchable. That was what troubled him most. Civilizations devoured what they found. Planets were stripped, moons harvested, oceans boiled for fuel. But Earth remained inviolate. Not by law alone, by fear. The kind of fear that sank its claws into logic. Arik wanted to understand why. His mentors urged him to abandon the thought. Knowledge is not always a gift, one had told him, mandibles trembling. Some truths unmake those who learn them. But the warning only sharpened his hunger. He began to collect the fragments others ignored. Sensor echoes from the quarantine perimeter, fragments of ancient transmissions, cultural scraps describing the humans not as monsters, but as something else, dreamers. The word unsettled him more than any tale of war. Dreamers could awaken. Late in the cycle, as he pored over his findings, he realized what no one dared admit. If the stories were false, then the one rule was madness. And if they were true, then the galaxy was living inside a fragile cage, its bars made not of metal but of sleep. Arik's spines bristled as he whispered to the empty chamber, "What happens when the humans open their eyes?" Outside his viewport, the stars seemed to shift, just slightly, just enough to make him wonder if they had heard the question. The breaking of the rule. The expedition was not meant to happen. Every law, every patrol, every whisper of warning should have kept it from forming. But hunger had a way of sharpening courage, and greed had a way of blinding it. Arik discovered that lesson the hard way when he found himself aboard the smuggler ship Vulture's Wing, her hull scarred, her crew restless. They were not scholars. They were thieves, zealots, and desperates. Captain Jarek claimed the humans had left behind technologies untouched for millennia, machines that could buy empires. Another crew member, a gaunt insectoid named Siru, muttered prayers about witnessing the holy dreamers. Others spoke less, but their eyes burned with the same reckless fire, the need to touch what was forbidden. Arik had told himself he joined only to observe, to record. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wanted answers more than he wanted safety. And the Vulture's Wing promised answers. The journey was tense from the beginning. Navigation systems flickered with static as they neared the Sol system. Stars that had always held steady began to blur on the sensors, as though reality itself resisted being charted. Crew members dreamed restless dreams, standing in cities they had never visited, hearing voices in languages they had never learned. Some woke screaming. When Arik asked Captain Jarek if they should turn back, the grizzled veteran spat a curse. "Turn back from fortune, from destiny. You scholars rot in libraries, but I've flown a dozen dead sectors. This is no different." But it was different. As they slipped past the final warning beacons, their transmissions long since reduced to static, Arik felt the silence press in. Not the silence of empty space, but the silence of being watched. The crew felt it too. Jarek barked louder to mask his unease. Siru prayed more fervently. Even the ship itself seemed reluctant, engines straining as if through unseen resistance. Then Earth appeared on the viewscreen. Arik's breath caught. No archive, no tale, no fragment of myth had prepared him for the sight. The planet glowed in soft blues and greens, oceans shimmering under cloud veils, continents stretching vast and untouched. It was not ruined, nor colonized, nor aged. It was perfect, preserved, waiting. The crew muttered among themselves. Some cursed in awe, others whispered as if afraid to raise their voices. Jarek grinned with a hunger that chilled Arik's spines. "Do you see it?" the captain said. "A whole world, sleeping. And we will be the first to plunder its treasures." Arik wanted to protest, to warn them of the myths, the law, the rule older than empires. But as the ship descended through the thin atmosphere, he found no words. His voice had deserted him. The vulture's wing broke through the clouds, engines roaring, and below them stretched a city. Not ruins, cities untouched, towers gleaming with a strange perfection, streets empty yet pristine, as though their inhabitants had merely stepped away for a moment. No one breathed. Then one of the crew, trembling with excitement, fired a beacon into the sky to mark their claim. The sound it made was wrong. It did not echo against atmosphere or ground, it echoed against something else. And for the first time in 10,000 years, Earth stirred. The awakening. The beacon's pulse rolled across the city like a wave. Buildings that had slept in silence for millennia shivered with faint vibrations. Windows gleamed, lights flickered faintly within. Arik's spines bristled. The air itself felt thicker, charged with some invisible current. His translator implant crackled with interference, a voice whispering words he didn't understand. He tried to speak, but his own voice sounded distant, muffled, as though swallowed by something greater. Captain Jarek didn't notice, or pretended not to. His eyes burned with triumph as he ordered the crew forward. "Do you see? Their machines still live. Power untouched. Riches beyond count, waiting for those bold enough to claim them." But the crew was faltering. Siru, the insectoid zealot, dropped to his knees, clawed limbs trembling as he chittered. "They dream no longer. They rise." His many eyes darted skyward, wide and wild. And above them, the stars shifted. It was subtle at first, a constellation bending, a pulsar blinking off-beat, but Arik had studied maps his entire life. The heavens were wrong. As though reality itself was adjusting, aligning, preparing. Then the city spoke. It wasn't sound, not truly. More like vibration in bone, pressure behind the eyes, the faint impression of language woven directly into thought. The words were ancient, yet clear. "Who calls us?" The crew broke. One fled into the empty streets, shrieking. Another slammed his fists against the controls, desperate to launch the ship back into orbit. Jarek shouted over them, cursing, clinging to greed as though it were a shield. Arik could only stand frozen, staring at the towers as light coursed up their sides. The architecture itself was waking, humming with strange harmonics. This was no mere city, it was a conduit. A bridge between the sleeping humans and the galaxy that had forgotten them. The ground trembled. A fissure split across the plaza, light spilling from beneath the stone like molten gold. From the rift rose a figure. Not a person, not yet. It was more suggestion than flesh, a shimmering silhouette of human form, taller than any creel, brighter than the sun's. Its edges wavered as though struggling to stay anchored in the present. The voice came again, clearer now, and it filled every living mind within reach. "Who wakes us?" Arik fell to his knees, not from reverence but from sheer weight. It was as though gravity itself had tripled. Every thought screamed to him what he already knew. The one rule had not been superstition. It had been survival. Jarek staggered forward, trying to speak, but his words slurred into nothing. The figure turned its gaze upon him, and his body crumpled like paper, dissolved into drifting dust. No scream, no struggle, just gone. The plaza fell silent again, save for the low hum of the awakened city. Arik's chest heaved. The stars themselves trembled above him. And deep within the earth, more voices began to stir. When the stars quiver. The air was no longer air. It thrummed with resonance, vibrating through bone and metal alike. The city shone in lines of light, a lattice of energy awakening beneath its streets, across its towers, through the very sky. Arik clutched the ground as if it could steady him, but the world itself was moving. Gravity shifted and flexed, pulling sideways, upward, inward. Above, the constellations bent like reeds in a current. Stars slid against one another, their eternal positions undone by something greater than physics. And then the humans began to rise. They came not as a crowd, not as an army, but as a presence. Figures flickered into being along the towers, on the streets, in the air itself. Each one shimmered like heat haze, barely anchored, their outlines glowing with a suggestion of form. They were tall, strong, impossibly vast, and their eyes burned with a kind of light that saw everything at once. The crew of the Vulture's wing broke entirely. Some screamed and ran into the glowing streets, vanishing as if the city absorbed them. Others fell prostrate, babbling prayers, their minds too fragile to withstand the weight of what stood before them. Only Arik remained upright, shaking but conscious. His scholar's mind screamed with understanding even as it drowned in terror. Humanity was not merely a species. They were foundations. Dreamers whose slumber kept reality itself from unraveling. To wake them was not to invite conquest, it was to invite change. One of the luminous figures turned toward him. Unlike the others, it held its form more solidly, a tall human, features sharp but indistinct, radiating both warmth and unbearable power. When it spoke, the words rippled not through the ears but through existence itself. "You broke the silence." Arik tried to respond, but no words came. His throat closed, his mind blank. The figure seemed to understand his silence. "We slept so the young might grow," it continued. "We dreamed, and in our dreaming, the stars were steady. But dreamers cannot sleep forever." The ground quaked. Across the horizon, entire continents lit with golden veins, humming with the same terrible harmony. The oceans themselves began to glow as if responding to a heartbeat older than life. "You fear us," the human said, voice resonant. "And you are right to fear. But it is not vengeance we bring. It is awakening." Above, the heavens buckled. Pulsars stuttered, nebulae shifted, entire constellations twisted into new shapes. To lesser eyes it was chaos. To Arik it was design. The humans were not destroying the galaxy, they were rewriting it. Siru, still kneeling nearby, whispered in awe. "They remake the stars." Arik finally found his voice, trembling. What becomes of us?" The figure leaned closer, gaze burning like 1,000 suns. For a heartbeat, Arik felt warmth rather than terror, like a parent watching a child take its first steps. "That depends," the voice thundered gently, "on whether you walk with us, or stand against us." And with that, the stars themselves quivered, bending into new constellations that marked the return of humanity.